Good day everyone, we are Group 1 and also the Reporter 2. So for today's video, we're going to discuss the two topics which is the state tax and donor's tax. So yun po. So let's start for the first topic which is the state tax. So let me introduce myself first. Hi, I'm Nicaela Macuña and I'm the first reporter. So, for the state tax, we have the first one which is the gross estate. So, ano ba yung gross estate? So, gross estate, this is the total value of all the properties or asset na pagmamay-ari ng isang tao na namatay na. So, dito sa gross estate, yung kanyang mga properties, kanyang mga asset is wala pang dinededuct. Wala pang binabawas dito. Siya yung pinaka-starting point sa pag-compute ng state tax. So, ayun, kung ihalin tulad natin siya, siguro sa income statement or they call it as a statement of operation. 'Di ba sa income statement, meron tayong sales doon. Si sales yung pinaka-starting point para sa pag-compute ng income statement. So, sales less operating expense is equal to operating income. So, ganun din po dito si gross estate. Si gross estate, siya po yung pinaka-starting point. Ito yung mga total value of all the properties and asset na pagmamay-ari ng yumao ng tao. So, yun po si gross estate. So, ito po, kung makikita niyo po dito sa picture, no, yan na po yung mga example. So, the first one, we have the, meron tayo ditong real estate. So, real estate, kagaya ng mga bahay, lupa, tapos yung isa naman is yung personal properties such as cars, mga vehicle, ganun, jewelry, mga accessories like watch, yun po yung personal property. And then yung financial account. So sa financial account, yan, mga bank account, mga investment, mga retirement account, kagaya ng SSS, yun po yung mga example for the gross estate. So, next naman po tayo is sa deduction from the gross estate. So, dito po, meron po tayo ditong three main types of deduction. So, the first one, we have here the ordinary deduction or tinatawag din niyang ILIT. So, E stands for expense, L stands for losses, I stands for interest, and T stands for taxes. So, the first one, we have here the expense. So dito po sa expense, may dalawa po tayo. So, una ay yung funeral expense. So, para makuha yung funeral expense, no, gross estate multiplied to 5% kasi 5% yung kinukuha ni funeral expense. So, and then, for example, 500,000. So, 500,000 yung gross estate multiplied to 5% is equal to 25,000. So, 25,000 yung funeral expense niya. So, meron naman po ditong 200,000 max amount. So, for example, yun nga, yung na-compute natin kanina, 25,000 yung na-compute for the gross estate. And then, ito pong 200,000 is for max amount lang po siya. So, kapag lumampas po yung funeral expense mo ng 200,000, 200,000 lang yung babayaran mo kasi yun lang po yung max amount niya. So, yun po yung funeral expense. So, next naman po, we have here the judicial expense. So, itong judicial expense is more on expenditure spent to the attorney or to the lawyer settlement of the state. So, dito po pumapasok yung mga expense or gastusin sa mga attorney, sa mga lawyer, kasi po sila po yung nagpa-process ng properties sa pag-transfer ng mga asset or properties ng pagmamay-ari ng namatay na. So, yun po yung judicial expense. And then, next naman po is yung losses. So, ano ba yung losses? Itong losses, dito po pumapasok yung mga theft losses, mga property damage or stolen after the death. So, mga nung bago siya mamatay, mga may pagnanakaw na mga nangyayari. So, isa pong example din po dito is yung business losses. So, sa business losses, example po doon is kumare, na bedridden yung owner and then nasa hospital siya ng matagal. Yung business ay hindi naasikaso and then katagalan, ito ay na-bankrupt, ito ay nalugi. So, yun din po. Yun po yung example sa losses. And then, next naman po is interest. So, interest, ito po yung mga unpaid interest on loans, mortgages, and other obligation. mga hindi din po nabayaran. And then next naman po is yung taxes. So taxes, unpaid taxes, mga hindi nabayaran, mga naipon na tax na hindi nabayaran. So isang example po dito is yung isang tao, may isa siyang pagmamay-ari na malawak na lupain. Tapos siya ay nagkasakit at nasa hospital din ng matagal at maraming gastusin, hindi po nakabayad ng mga tax at naipon siya. Yun po ay isa din example for the taxes, mga hindi nakabayad, unpaid taxes, hindi nabayaran. So dahil nga naipon, ayun, madededuct siya for its properties or gross state. So yun po. So next naman po tayo, isa sa mga types of deduction, we have here the special deduction. So itong special deduction ay mayroong amount na 5 million. So ito pong 5 million, fixed deduction po siya. Kaya siya fixed deduction, hindi siya nababago, hindi siya bumababa, hindi siya tumataas. Fixed amount siya na 5 million. Kaya po siya fixed deduction kasi under siya ng train law. So ayan po, 5 million yung kanyang amount for standard deduction. So next naman po, we have here the medical expenses. So sa medical expenses, ito yung mga gastusin sa hospital nung nagkasakit siya, ganun. So dito din po, may amount din po tayo dito. May max amount din po tayo dito na 500,000. Ayan po. For like example, ang gastusin niya, yung medical expenses niya, umabot ng 600,000. Tapos, ang babayaran niya lang ay 500,000 kasi yun yung max amount eh. Yun yung max amount ng medical expenses pagdating sa special deduction, which is yung 500,000. So, yun po yung for medical expenses. And the next naman po tayo ay sa family home deduction. So, sa family home deduction, dito po may amount po tayo dito na 10 million. So, 10 million din siya. Fixed deduction. So, dito po ay kaya po may ganito is to protect the decedent family resident from being heavily taxed. So for like example po, ang isang tao may gross profit po siya na 20 million. So 20 million minus 10 million is equal to 10 million na lang po. So 10 million na lang po yung matitira niya. So that is the family home deduction po. And then for the last types of deduction po, we have here the deduction according to train law. So, kung mapapansin nyo po, ito po yung mga list ng train law. So, dito po sa una, meron tayong standard deduction. So, natakil na din po natin yan kanina, which is yung fixed amount nga. Fixed deduction siya na 5 million. So, ayan po yung mga list. So, we have here the claims against the state, claims of the decedent against insolvent person, property previously taxed, and so on. And then next naman po tayo sa net state. So itong net state, we have here the formula. So paano ba nakukuha yung net state? So ayan po yung formula natin. So we have gross state. Sabi ko nga kanina, si gross state, siya yung pinaka total value of all the properties and asset na pagmamay-ari ng tao. So gross state less the deduction or the allowable deduction is equal to net state. So for the next slide, we have here the example computation or computation example, no? So dito, so for the gross state, we have the 20 million. And then for the deduction, we have standard deduction of 5 million, family home deduction of 10 million, and medical expenses of 500,000. So gross state, 20 million less the 15,500,000 deduction is equal to 4,500,000. So, yun po yung net state niya. Yan po yung result ng net state. So, that's how the net state compute. So, next naman po, we have here the state tax. So, itong state tax po, this is what? This is the tax on the right to transfer property after the death. So, ito yung tax na binabayad kapag nagta-transfer na ng properties and asset, ganun. So dito po, meron po tayo ditong 6%. So, 6% po yung tax. And then, sinasabi din dito, must be filled within 1 year of death. So, kailangan ma-process na siya within 1 year. And then, meron din po dito tayong installment. So, sa installment, if the state cannot pay the tax in full, pwede siyang installment ng within 2 years. mag-installment within 2 years, wala siyang penalty and interest. So, yun po yung kagandahan kasi wala siyang penalty and interest, no? So, next naman po tayo. Ito po yung formula for the state tax computation. So, first, we have the gross state less allowable deduction is equal to net state. So, net state multiplied to 6% is equal to state tax. So, yan po yung kanyang formula. So the next slide, we have here the example computation, no? So, yung kaninang example po for the net state, no, same lang po ng info, no? So, for the gross state, so gross state with 20 million less 15,500,000 is equal to 4,500,000 net state. So, to compute the state tax, 4,500,000 multiplied to 6% is equal to 270,000. And then, para naman po makuha yung net state after tax, ililess lang po natin yung net state sa state tax. So, 4,500,000 less 270,000 is equal to 4,230,000. So, yan po yung kanyang computation example. So, yun po. So, later on po, mas lalo po pong natin maintindihan yan kasi may iba't ibang example at scenario po kaming i-discuss later on ng yep. So, next naman po tayo sa exemption, gross state exemption. So, dito po may tatlo po tayo. So, for the first one, we have the transfer for public use. So, itong transfer for public use, this is the only part of the state that is donated or transferred to the government, such as the educational, religious, cultural purposes, and etc. So, bakit po siya nasama? Kaya po siya exemption, yung transfer for public use, is kasi po hindi po siya for private gain, but for public gain. Ginagamit siya sa mga mamamayan sa Pilipinas. So, kaya po siya kasama sa exemption. So, next naman po is amount received by her under RA 4917. So, ito po, this refers to the retirement benefits given to the heirs of the private employee under BIR. So, dito po sinasabi na yung mga worker or yung mga employee sa BIR is exempted po sila. Kasi, nung nagwo-work sila, may benefit silang nakukuha at ito po yung benefit niya sa BIR. So, this was granted as part of the employee's retirement. So, kaya yun po yung dahilan kung bakit exemption siya. So, last naman po is vanishing deduction. This is the property previously taxed. So, previously taxed. For the example po, if the son inherits a property from his father, and then the son dies shortly after, the same property could be taxed again in the son's state. So, dito po, ibig sabihin nito is namatay yung tatay niya. Namatay yung tatay niya, tapos tinransfer sa anak niya, and then may bayaran na naganap doon, which is yung tax na binawas na 6%. And then, later on, bigla-biglaan namatay yung anak, kung saan doon tinransfer yung mga properties, asset, and ipapasa na naman siya sa pamilya nito. So, yun po yung dahilan para ma-avoid yung double taxation, which is yung 6% po. Kaya po siya kasama sa exemption. So, that is the vanishing deduction. So, that's all po for my report. So, now let's proceed to the next reporter.
Good day everyone, I am Sheka Ihimpisaw. Next is beneficiaries and distribution of estate. Number 1 is affinity. It is a relationship that is created through legal ties, such as marriage and adoption. Example is sister-in-law or spouse. Next is consanguinity. On the other hand, consanguinity is a relationship that is created by blood or ancestry. Example, daughter, son, nieces, or aunts. These two are important when inheritance is in talks since they are the determinants of who is eligible for inheritance.
Next slide is where you can see the order of succession in estate. Pag sinabing in estate is walang will and testament na basis ang pamilya. The rules on order of succession in the Philippines come from the Civil Code of the Philippines, specifically Book 3, Title 4, Succession, Article 774 to 1105. The main law is called Republic Act No. 386, or an act to ordain and institute the Civil Code of the Philippines, enacted on June 18, 1949, and took effect on August 30, 1950. What if may iniwan naman na last will and testament yung namatay? Then ito yung pinakamadali since may susundan na mismo yung pamilya. It must be followed according to its term. If wala naman, then the Philippine law must be followed, which is called the in-estate.
How do we fairly distribute inheritance? First thing is we must identify the gross estate through listing down all properties and resources. Then subtract all allowable deduction such as funeral and medical expenses. Then after subtracting everything, you will get the net estate. Just like the discussion earlier, multiply the net estate with 6% to determine the tax that must be paid. After the computation, beneficiaries must be determined in order to divide the estate fairly.
Why understanding tax is important? Hindi na bago sa ating mga Pinoy yung agawan ng lupa. So, importante talaga na idaan lahat legally. So, here are the 4 reasons why understanding estate tax is important. Number 1 is legal and fair distribution. Number 2, maiiwasan ang dispute or pagtatalo-talo. Number 3, wala ka ding magiging problema with BIR. And number 4 is this help families in planning ahead and minimizing tax.
Good day, I'm Leira Celina Bautista, and I'll be presenting estate tax scenarios, real-world cases showing how estate tax is calculated, deducted, and minimized.
Prince Rogers Nelson, the iconic musician, passed away unexpectedly on April 21, 2016, leaving behind a vast musical legacy, but no estate plan.
For scenario number 1, which is basic calculation, gross estate, this is the total value of everything he owned at the time of death. House, car, savings, which adds up to 12 million. Deductions, amount that reduce the taxable estate. 5 million standard deduction. Family home deduction up to a maximum of 10 million. Since the actual value is 8 million, that's the amount. Funeral expenses, which is 200k, medical bills or expenses 400k, net estate calculation, 12 million gross estate minus all the deduction is equal to 0 net estate. Tax due, since the net estate is 0, the estate tax due is 0. The rule is if the net estate is 0 or less, no estate tax is due. After applying all the allowed deduction, the estate is reduced to 0, meaning no tax is payable. For number 2 is no family home. Same scenario and example but walang family home deduction. Again, 5 million standard deduction, 200k funeral expenses, 400 medical expenses, total deduction will be 5.6 million. So 12 million minus 5.6 total deduction will be 6.4 million net estate. 6.4 million times 6% tax due is equal to 384,000.
Can you remember where you put your will?
I think he hid it.
Look everywhere, Orville. It could be anywhere.
And number 3 is estate tax amnesty. Their father died in 2015 with a 20 million undeclared estate. Using the estate tax amnesty, which is valid until June 14, 2025. The amnesty allows heirs to settle estate taxes at a flat rate of 6% on the net estate value, without penalties or interest, for estates of individual who passed away on or before May 31, 2022. Since the father died in 2015, his estate qualifies. Estate is worth 20 million and under the amnesty, the tax due is 6% of 20 million, which is equal to 1.2 million. No penalties. Normally, late filing would incur penalties and interest, but the amnesty waives these charges, making it easier for heirs to comply. E-car insurance. After paying the estate tax, heirs received an electronic certificate authorizing registration, which is required to transfer the property title to their name. E-car insurance. After paying the estate tax, heirs received an electronic certificate authorization registration, which is required to transfer the property title to their name. Basically, simplifies the estate tax compliance and helps family to legally transfer inherited assets without excess financial burden. And number 4 is multiple heir. They inherited a 10 million estate from their father. So 10 million minus 5 million standard deduction is equal to 5 million net estate. 5 million times 6% is equal to 300,000 tax due. 5 million of net estate minus 300,000 tax due divide 2 since dalawa sila is equal to 2,350,000 share. And for number 5 is conjugal property. In the context of marriage, conjugal property means the property owned jointly by both spouses. His wife died leaving a 15 million conjugal house and a 3 million personal savings. Spouses gets 50% automatically. It is equal to 7.5 million from the house. The remaining 7.5 million plus 3 million personal savings is equal to 10.5 gross estate. The deductions will be 5 million standard deduction, 500,000 medical expenses, 200,000 funeral expenses. It is equal to 4.8 million net estate. So 4.8 million times 6% tax due is equal to 288,000.
Too late. That's my money. How is somebody just going to just take my money? I was listen. That's all the money that I have. You cannot go into my bank account. No.
For number 6 is installment payment. If you can pay the tax upfront, you can request for it in installment. Under the estate tax amnesty program, you can pay the tax over for 2 years without interest. Court settlement, if the estate is undergoing judicial settlement, you can pay the tax over for 5 years. And for late payment interest, if you miss payments or fail to settle tax on time, an annual interest of 12% will be applied to the unpaid amount.
I wonder what that could be. Oh no.
Hi, I'm Jeremy Larcon and I'll be continuing our estate tax scenario discussion. Penalties for non-compliance. Nakita naman sa video may dumating na notice. Ibig sabihin lang nun hindi sila nakapag-file ng estate tax on time. In real life, hindi lang basta sulat ang matatanggap mo. May mga kapalit yan ng consequences. Una, may surcharge ka na pwedeng 25% hanggang 50% ng total na estate tax. So kung dapat 100,000 lang ang babayaran mo, pwedeng maging 125,000 or even 150,000 na dahil sa late payment. Next, may 12% na interest kada taon. So habang tumatagal, lumalaki talaga yung utang mo sa gobyerno. At hindi lang yan. Kapag talaga matigas ulo mo at hindi ka pa rin nagbayad, pwedeng umabot sa criminal case at makulong ng hanggang 5 years.
I have here the Blake Media Ledger sign-in book from April 1957. On the night of the 12th, there was only one woman working on Preston Blake's floor. Sadly, 9 months later, she died giving birth to a son born January 23rd, 1958.
That is my birthday.
To a Miss Consuela Lopez.
That is my mother.
Small estate exemption. May mga pagkakataon naman na hindi na kailangan magbayad ng estate tax. Kagaya ng iniwan ay 4 million lang sa anak. At dahil may 5 million standard deduction, technically exempted na. Pero kahit exempted, kailangan pa rin i-file yung Form 1801 sa BIR. Dito, nilalagay lahat ng estate details. kahit maliit lang ang halaga, para maayos yung pag-transfer ng ari-arian at maiwasan ang legal problems in the future. Foreign assets. Ang senaryo naman dito is merong iniwang 20 million na ari-arian si deceased or yung namatay. Tapos may 5 million na property sa ibang bansa. 20 million plus 5 million is equal to 25 billion gross estate. 25 million minus 5 million standard deduction minus 10 million family home is equal to 10 million net estate. Estate tax ay 6% ng net estate, so 600,000 ang kailangan bayaran. Blended family. Sa blended family scenario, mayroong 3 heirs na magmamana ng estate mula sa namatay nilang tatay. Ang estate na iniwan ng tatay nila ay 10 million. From 10 million estate, kalahati nun which is 5 million mapupunta agad sa asawa bilang conjugal share. Ang natirang 5 million ay hatiin. 25% sa anak na lalaki sa legal wife which is 1.25 million at kalahati nun sa anak na babae sa labas which is 625,000. Si asawa din ay may 25% ng balance which is 1.25 million kaya total niya ay 6.25 million. Pagkatapos ng mga legal deduction gaya ng standard deduction at family home exemption, kwekwentahin ang estate tax na 6% ng net estate.
What is it? Ruben. It's about your father. He's dead.
Business inheritance. Sa video, nakita natin na namatay yung tatay niya. Iniwan niya yung assets niya sa kanyang anak. Ang tanong, may estate tax ba sa mga ganitong pamana? Ang sagot dyan is oo, meron. Ganito ang example ng computation. Halimbawa, 8 million ang value ng business. May 5 million standard deduction at 200,000 funeral expenses. Kaya 5.2 million ang total deduction. 8 million minus 5.2 million is equal to 2.8 million net estate. 6% ng 2.8 million is equal to 168,000 estate tax. Bago malipat ang negosyo sa anak, kailangan mo na itong bayaran.
Aunt Hilda's dying. Cancer.
We heard you weren't well.
You think the sight of you two is gonna cheer me up? Are you dim?
Oh, cousin Beatrice is here from New York, huh?
And she thinks that the sun shines out of my ass.
We know why you're here. Do you think we look like idiots?
Do you really want me to answer that question?
Disputed estate. Kahit may away sa atin ng mana, gaya na nangyari sa video, hindi yan excuse. Kailangan pa rin mag-file ng estate tax sa BIR within 1 year. Bayaran mo na ang estate tax, saka na-resolve yan kung paano hatiin ang mana. Kung hindi ka mag-file on time, may penalties na kasama, kaya hindi pwedeng pabayaan lang. Mas mabuting mag-file agad kahit may dispute pa. Ngayon na alam na natin kung paano gumagana ang estate tax, ito ang mga practical steps na dapat gawin kapag may naiwan na pamana. Una, ilista lahat ng assets kahit sentimental items like jewelry. Kasi kailangan i-declare lahat sa BIR. Pangalawa, gamitin lahat ng possible deductions tulad ng family home at medical expenses para bumaba ang estate tax. Pangatlo, siguraduhin makapag-file bago June 2025 para ma-avail ang amnesty, benefits at may wasang penalties. At kung may blended family o may gulo sa hatian, mas mabuting kumonsulta sa lawyer para maayos ang proseso. Tanong, paano kung hindi kayang magbayad ng abogado? Kung walang budget para sa abogado, merong pre-tax clinics ang BIR kung saan pwede magtanong at humingi ng tulong sa tamang pag-file ng estate tax. Pati ang Public Attorney's Office ay nagbibigay ng libre legal assistance. Kaya may mga paraan para matulungan ka kahit wala kang pambayad sa abogado.
Hi, good morning everyone. This is Angel Lau and I'm going to discuss the step-by-step breakdown on how we can compute for gross estate, the total deductions for gross estate, the net estate, the estate tax, and the apportionment for the beneficiaries. So first, we're going to discuss the computing for the gross estate. When for gross estate, It includes all properties owned by the decedent. And when we say decedent, this is the person who died, or basically siya yung taong namatay na may ari-arian na kailangan nating hatiin or kailangan nating i-compute. For the properties under gross estate, it includes personal property and real property. For personal property, yung mga nakapaloob dito are yung cash, jewelries, investments, and trust funds as well. Yun yung mga nakapaloob doon. While for real property naman, these are houses, lots, and land in different areas. With real property, ito yung mga properties that we can't immediately transfer to the beneficiaries, unlike with personal property kasi medyo mas may mahabang process pa with the real property compared with the personal property. So, I'm going to read an example para ma-try nating ma-apply in real life yung mga step-by-step breakdown na i-discuss ko. So, the problem is, the husband died for no reason. There's no will because of the immediate death of the husband while laughing and hanging out with friends. He is a playboy with 2 mistresses aside from her legal wife. He had 2 sons. One is the legal and the other one is illegitimate. He had parents on his mansion, also with 3 legally adopted daughters. And his personal property is 20 million, with different real property comprising of different house and lot in the different area here in the Philippines worth 890 million, and his mansion worth a market value of 10 million wherein living the legal wife and his son. So, we need to apply yung sinasabi ko kanina, or for the computing for the gross estate, we're going to base it dun sa example na minasa ko. So, the personal property na nabanggit, it's amounting to 20 million. And then yung real property naman, it's amounting to 890 million. For us to compute for the total gross estate ni husband, or nung deceased husband, we have to add the personal property of 20 million to the real property of 890 million. Once added, it would give us a total gross estate of 910 million, and excluded pa doon yung mansion or yung family home kung saan nakatira si legal wife and si son, which has a market value of 10 million. Once we're done, since we're done computing for the gross estate, we're now going to proceed for the deductions dun sa gross estate na na-compute natin earlier. So, under train law, we have allowable deductions. First na doon is si standard deduction. With standard deduction, ito meron tayong 500 million. Ano to? Fixed amount to na i-deduct natin whenever we try to compute for the deductions sa gross estate. Ito automatically na dinededuct natin with the gross estate. Wala nang tanong-tanong, talagang fixed rate or fixed amount yung kailangan nating ibawas with the standard deduction, and that is 5 million. For the family home deduction, we can deduct up to 10 million peso dun sa bahay kung saan nga nakatira si legal wife or yung legal family nung namatay or nung deceased person. For the funeral expenses, we can deduct up to 200,000 peso. And if the amount is not stated based on the problem or the examples, ganyan, or the scenarios, ang default amount natin is the 200,000 pesos. Or sometimes naman, if parang mas mahal yung, or kung magkano yung actual expenses, kung ano yung mas mura, if the actual expenses ba, or si 200,000 peso, we're going to go by the cheaper price. Or kung ano yung mas bababa, yun yung kinukuha natin sa times. So, if we're going to try to compute for the total deductions based on the example, meron tayong 5 million for the standard deduction that is fixed. The 10 million for the family home, nabanggit din natin na ang market value kanina ng bahay is 10 million. So we're going to deduct that as well. And then, since hindi nabanggit kung magkano yung nagastos for the funeral or yung funeral expenses, then we're going to stick or we're going to use the 200,000 peso, which is the default for the funeral expenses. So if we're going to add those three, ang makukuha nating total for the total deductions is 15,200,000 pesos. So with that, yun yung total deductions natin. Since na-compute na natin si gross estate and then si total deductions, we're now going to proceed for the computation or the calculation for net estate and the estate tax. For net estate, ito very basic lang. We just have to deduct yung total deductions dun sa gross estate natin. So, based on the problem kanina or based dun sa naging example natin, yung gross estate natin, it's amounting to 910 million. And then, yung total deductions naman natin is 15,200,000 pesos. So, if we're going to deduct the 15,200,000 to the 910 million, ang magiging sagot na, ang sagot na makukuha natin is 894,800,000. So that, or yung 894,800,000, that would be our net estate. Pero before tax pa yon, since we have to compute for the estate tax as well. And for computing the estate tax, ang always na formula natin is we have to get the 6% of the computed net estate. So magkano nga ulit yung nakuha nating net estate? It's 894,800,000. So we have to get the 6% of that amount for us to get the estate tax. So 6% times 894,800,000, we're going, or yung answer na makukuha natin is 53,688,000. So si 53,688,000, that is yung net estate natin. Yun pala yung net estate. So we have to proceed now with the net estate after tax. So for computing for this naman, we'll just have to get the net estate, which is yung 894,800,000, and as well as yung estate tax natin na 53,688,000. We'll just have to subtract those two, or kailangan lang nating ibawas si 53,688,000 kay 894,800,000. So, kapag pinag-minus natin yon, ang difference na makukuha is 841,112,000. Yung 841,112,000, that would be our net estate after tax, and that would be the amount na i-apportionment natin to the beneficiaries. So, since we're done computing for all of this, magpo-proceed naman na tayo ngayon magpo-proceed na tayo ngayon sa apportionment nung net estate natin to the beneficiaries. Please take note as well na yung example natin earlier, it states na for no will. Kasi nga, biglaan lang na namatay yung husband, so walang will and testament na naiwan. So, hindi prepared. So, ito, ang susundin lang natin dito, it's according to the law. Kapag walang will and testament na naiwan, we're going to follow the rule of law. Ang pagkakasunod-sunod is, uunahin natin yung share muna ni wife, and by law, kapag legally married kayo, or ikaw yung legal wife, legal spouse, or legal husband nung deceased person, automatically you'll get the 50% of the net estate. Magkano nakuha nating net estate earlier? It's 841,112,000. So we'll have to compute for the 50%. So we have to multiply it. 50% times 841,112,000. That would lead us, or that would give us an answer of 420,556,000. So, itong 420,556,000 na to, ito na yung buong share nung legal wife dun sa net estate ng husband niya. So, solely kanya lang yon since siya yung legal wife. And then, yung remaining 50% natin, which is the other half of 420,556,000, we'll have to split it again into 50%. So, if we're going to multiply naman yung 50% times 420 million, I'm so sorry, 420,556,000, we're going to get an answer of 210,278,000, which is the free portion. And yung free portion na yun, yung nakuha nating 210,278,000, that would be the amount na paghahati-hatian naman nung other successor or nung other beneficiaries nung husband. So, hahatiin natin siya based dun sa problem, kanina natin hahatiin sa isang legitimate son, isang illegitimate son, and then 3 yung legally adopted daughters. So, ilan yun? 1, 2, plus 5, plus 3. So, 5. Sa 5 natin hahatian. Kapag ganito, meron tayong sharing rule. This is for the, this is for the no will and testament na naiwan ng deceased husband. Kapag legitimate or adopted child or adopted children, automatically may 2 shares each yung mga anak na yon. And then for the illegitimate child naman, meron lang siyang 1 share. So medyo nakakaangat lang ng konti yung legitimate child and yung adopted children. So if we're going to add yung shares based dun sa number of people na kailangan nating hatiin yung money or yung estate tax, I'm sorry, it's not estate tax, the net estate, i-add natin yung 2, diba meron tayong 2 for the legitimate son, and then merong 3 adopted daughters, which is tigda-2 din yon, so that's 6 plus 2, that would give us an 8 shares, plus may isa pang illegitimate son, so that would lead us to 9 shares. So when computing for the mana, dun sa makukuha nila sa net estate nung namatay nilang tatay, we have to compute or we have to yung formula na gagamitin natin. Unahin natin yung legitimate son and yung adopted daughters. Since 4 sila, so what we have to do is i-divide natin yung 2 divided by 9. Bakit 2 divided by 9? Kasi 9 shares yung meron na kinumpute natin earlier, and then 2 kasi meron silang 2 shares each. So 2 divided by 9, ita-times natin siya dun sa magkaning nakuha natin kanina nung in-split natin yung 420,556,000. The answer was 210,278,000. Yun yung free portion, 278,000. Yun yung free portion natin. And yun yung kailangan nating, doon natin kailangan i-multiply yung shares. So, if we're going to divide 2 divided by 9 times 200,278,000, that would give us an answer, or that would give us 46,728,000. I'm sorry, again, 46,728,444 pesos and 44 centavos. Yun yung shares nung 4, nung isang legitimate son and nung 3 adopted daughters. So yun yung sa kanila. Lahat sila may makukuhang 46,728,444 pesos and 44 cents. For the illegitimate child naman, since isa lang yung share niya, ang computation natin or ang formula na gagamitin natin is 1 divided by 9, since isa lang yung share niya, times yung 210 million and 278,000. Kapag pinag-multiply natin yun, ang magiging sagot natin, or ang sagot na makukuha natin is, I'm sorry, 23,364,222 pesos and 24 cents. So, yun naman yung magiging share ng illegitimate son dun sa pera or dun sa net estate ng tatay niya namatay. Now, let's try to see or let's try to compute kapag meron namang will or meron tayong testate succession. So, let's start to read the problem number 2, no? Sabi dito, same problem. Ibig sabihin, same situation din kanina, pero except that there's a will and testament involved. Ibig sabihin, may naiwang or bago pa mamatay yung husband, meron na siyang nakaprepare na will and testament for the beneficiaries or para dun sa magmamano ng pera at ari-arian niya. According to the will and testament, 80% of his estate will be divided among his children and the remaining 20% will be given to his favorite mistress. O, taray, may favorite mistress pa, si husband. So now, if we're going to try to compute for that, ang mangyayari, yung 80% dun sa children niya, and then yung 20% naman is for the favorite mistress. Actually, if iniisip nyo na walang makukuha si legal wife, ayun, medyo nagkakamali tayo doon. Meron pa rin 50% na makukuha si legal wife. Kasi nga, sa mata ng batas, siya yung legal wife so parang technically, she has the right for the money and yung ari-arian nung namatay niyang asawa. So, ang share ni legal wife, 50% pa rin. So, it's just the same as the earlier, 420,556,000. Yun pa rin yung share niya, walang nagbago. And then now, meron yung remaining na 50% natin, which is yung another 420,556,000. Doon natin hahatiin yung sa will and testament niya. So if we're going to get the 80% of the 420,556,000, yun na yung para sa mga anak niya. Ang makukuha natin doon is 336,444,800. Yun yung hahatiin sa 5 anak niya. So, kapag pag dinivide naman natin yung 336,444,800, kapag dinivide natin yun sa 5, since 5 yung anak niya, ang makukuha ng bawat anak niya, or nung 5 anak, is 67,000. No, it's not thousand, it's million. 67,288,960. So, bawat anak na may makukuha silang 67,288,960. Yun. Fix na yun. Yun na yung makukuha nila. While yung remaining 20% dun sa 420,556,000, yun naman yung mapupunta dun sa favorite mistress niya. So, pag tinimes naman natin si 20% dun sa 420 million, ang makukuha ni favorite mistress is 84,111,200. Yun naman yung perang makukuha niya. So, ganun lang. Tapos na, that's just how the step-by-step breakdown ends. So, parang ganun lang kadali. Mas madaling i-compute yung net estate kapag merong will and testament. Kasi, alam mo na yung percentage or yung certain percentage na makukuha ng bawat isa. Kung dun sa money and sa ari-arian na makukuha nung deceased person or nung dissident. Unlike with kapag wala kasing will and testament, we're going to go dun nga sa rule of law na kung sinasabing kapag laging 50%, whether may will and testament naman, laging 50% kay wife, dun sa legal wife or sa legal spouse. And then for the children kasi, medyo yun lang, if you're acknowledged like legally and adopted, medyo mas may edge ka when it comes to getting the money, unlike with illegitimate kasi talagang medyo mababa or medyo hindi ganun ka favorable for them yung makukuha nilang money. So next, we're going to proceed with the key concept explained. Ito simula to din sa discussion from the estate tax until the end of the step-by-step breakdown on how we can compute. So, ELIT, E-L-I-T, it stands for expenses, loss, indebtedness, and taxes types of deductions allowed from the gross estate. So, we have to take note of that. Kailangan natin maalala yun para kapag nagko-compute tayo ng gross estate, alam natin kung ano yung mga kailangan nating i-compute na deductions. Standard deduction, a fixed amount of 5 million subtracted from the gross estate. Again, under train law, nag-increase kasi yung standard deduction natin. Previously kasi it's just 1 million. But then under train law, nagkaroon tayo ng standard deduction of 5 million peso. And again, hindi siya nababago. Automatically yon, fixed 5 million talaga yung standard deduction natin. For family home deduction, meron tayong up to 10 million na deduction kung saan nakatira yung legal family nung deceased person. And then for the funeral expenses, up to 200,000 can be deducted. So bali parang for the funeral expenses, maximum na yung 200,000 na pwede nating ibawas. So again, whichever is lower, pwede nating sundin or pwede nating yun yung gamitin for the expenses para sa deductions, but then kailangan hindi lalagpas ng 200,000 because that is the maximum for the funeral expenses. For the estate tax rate, 6% of the net estate. Always yon, kasi remember whenever we try to compute for the withholding tax, 6% din yung ginagamit natin. That would be the same percentage that we're going to use whenever we try to compute for the estate tax. 6% of the net estate pa rin yung gagamitin natin. And so, kapag na-compute mo yon, you'll have to deduct it to the net estate so that you can get the net estate after tax. And then, the key concepts explained again, it's apportionment. With apportionment, it states here that the law provides rules for dividing the net estate among heirs with different shares for legitimate, adopted, and illegitimate children and the spouse. So again, sa apportionment, ito yung kapag walang will and testament, yung sumusunod tayo sa kung ano yung nakasaad sa law natin or sa batas natin sa kung paano dapat hatiin yung mga pera at ari-arian based dun sa legal legitimate child, yung adopted children or legally adopted children, yung sa asawa, and yung sa illegitimate children. Kapag may will, again, yung decedent or yung deceased person can assign portions, but the law still protects the compulsory heirs, which is the spouse and the legitimate children. So, sometimes kasi, di ba, ito yung mga nakikita natin sa drama na kapag may will and testament, minsan mas favorable dun sa illegitimate children kasi yun yung favorite or such. Pero kasi, again, under the law, kailangan or parang may legal rights pa rin yung legal spouse and then yung legal children nung decedent. Kapag wala namang will, sumusunod tayo sa batas as in solely kung ano yung nakasaad sa batas natin, yun yung susundin. Unlike with will and testament, pwede nating sundin kung ano yung nakalagay doon sa will and testament niya as long as mapoprotektahan pa rin yung rights or mabibigay pa rin yung tamang rights for the legal spouse and the legal children. And then, As you can see here sa table natin, ito yung summary table based from the example. So, again, ang gross estate natin is 910 million peso. The deductions, ang total deductions natin is 15,200,000 peso. Ang net estate natin kapag minus si deductions, total deductions sa gross estate, it would be 894,800,000. And then, ang estate tax natin is 53,688,000. And that would, if we're going to deduct yung estate tax sa net estate, ang makukuha nating net estate after tax would be 841,112,000. So, in conclusion, this video or this topic would give you a clear practical guide on how you can calculate for estate tax, on how we can apply the deductions, the distributing of the remaining estate among heirs, both with and without a will. So, I hope nakatulong naman yung explanation ko kahit medyo magulo, and I'm sorry for that. So, this topic for estate tax, it emphasizes the importance of understanding the law, maximizing deductions, and knowing how succession works to ensure fair and legal distribution of inheritance. So, hindi ko sure kung meron dito sa ating may mayamang magulang, but I hope this helped us on how we can compute or practice kung ano yung legal rights natin, kung may mamanahin ba kayo sa parents nyo, or if ever you'll be someone who will work sa ganitong industry, sa kung paano nag-deduct or kung paano nagko-compute ng estate tax for other people. So, yeah, that would be all, and thank you.
Good day, I am Shannon Santi Bergancia, and now we will move forward to discussion of donor's tax. Well, donor's tax is a tax imposed by the government when a living person, known as the donor, transfers a property known as the gift to another person called the donee. This means the donor isn't getting anything in return, or at least not the full value of what they're giving away. It doesn't matter if the gift is to a family member, a friend, a stranger, or even an organization or institution. If it's a gift, donor's tax applies. And it's not just about physical items like cars or houses. It covers all kinds of property, from real or personal, tangible or intangible, and whether the transfer is direct or indirect. Kung sa estate tax, pinag-uusapan natin, ipapataw yung tax kapag ang tao ay may naiwang property kapag siya ay namatay. Sa donor's tax, mapapatawan siya ng donor's tax or malalagyan ng donor's tax ang isang property niya o ang kanyang property once na binigay niya ito sa isang family member, a friend, or even a stranger, organization, or institution. So, kapag ikaw may property at nagbigay ka sa isang kakilala mo, mabibigyan or malalagyan agad yon ng donor's tax. Well, this is first question. When does donor's tax come into play? Well, donor's tax come into play whenever you give a gift, no matter who it's for. Donor's tax must be considered. The tax is calculated based on the total net gifts you give within a 1 calendar year. So, yung tax is, nakakompute yung tax kapag sa loob ng isang taon, nagbigay ka ng, for example, nagbigay ka ng bahay, nagbigay ka ng lupa, nagbigay ka ng sasakyan. Ang donor's tax is nai-apply sa isang buong taon. So, sa loob ng isang buong taon na yun, kinocompute nila yung naibigay mo sa kahit kanino, tas doon nila papatawan yung donor's tax. Next is, what about the tax rate or exemptions? Hanggang saan umaabot yung tax rate? Well, here's the good news. The first 250,000 pesos worth of gifts you give in a year is exempt from donor's tax. Any amount above that is taxed at 6% according to the trade law. So, ibig sabihin, lahat na regalo na pinamigay mo, ang covered lang or hindi matataksan is hanggang 250,000 pesos. For example, you give a house worth of 100,000, you give a lot worth of another 100,000, bali 200,000. Kapag yun lang ibinigay mo sa loob ng isang taon, hindi ka malalagyan ng isang donor's tax. Pero, kapag lumagpas yon ng 250,000 pesos, dun lang papasok yung tax na 6% according to the train law. Well, what documents do you need? Syempre, sa pag-process ng donor's tax, may mga kailangan kang papeles na asikasuhin na ipapasa mo sa BIR. First is the deed of donation, a statement of your relationship with the donee, proof of tax credit if applicable, certified true copies of property titles or tax declarations for real properties, proof of valuation for stocks or other properties, and any other supporting documents required by the BIR. Syempre, kailangan mo muna mapatunayan na yung binibigay mo sa bibigyan mo o ireregaluhan mo, ay sa'yo talaga. Hindi siya nakaw mo lang at kailangan mo mapatunayan yon sa BIR. So, to wrap it up, donor's tax is the government's way of taxing generous gifts, making sure that wealth transfers are fairly taxed even during the donor's lifetime. If you plan to give a significant gift, make sure you're aware of these rules to avoid any surprises. Thank you.
I am Angelica C. Halina, and today I'll be discussing some important points about donor's tax in the Philippines, specifically focusing on filing and payment, special rules, and exemptions. Let's start with filing and payment. When making a gift or donation, you are required to use BIR Form 1800, also known as the Donor's Tax Return. The deadline for filing is within 30 days after the date of the donation. Importante rin tandaan na kung maraming beses kang magdo-donate sa iba't ibang petsa sa loob ng isang taon, kailangan mo rin mag-file ng hiwalay na return para sa bawat donasyon. However, you must also reflect any previous gifts given earlier in the same calendar year. Now, let's move on to some special rules you need to know. If the gift involves a conjugal or community property, each spouse must file a separate return for their individual share of the donation. The same applies to co-owned properties. Each co-owner is required to file for their respective share. Lastly, let's talk about the exemptions from donor's tax. Una, kung ang donasyon ay para sa national government o sa mga ahensya nito, exempted ito sa donor's tax. Pangalawa, kung ito ay binigay sa mga educational, charitable, religious, cultural o social welfare institutions, accredited NGOs o research organizations, exempted rin ito basta't hindi lalagpas sa 30% ng donasyon ang ginagamit para sa administrative expenses. At panghuli, ang mga political donations ay hindi sakop ng donor's tax. Ito ay saklaw ng Omnibus Election Code. To sum up, while generosity is encouraged, it's important to understand the tax responsibilities that comes with it. Being aware of deadlines, rules, and exemptions can help ensure that your donations are not only meaningful, but also legally compliant.
Here's our example number 1, the taxable donation. Here's our scenario. Ella donates $285,000 to Cavite State University for a project. Here's our computation. So the donation minus the exemption and multiply it by the tax rate. So Ella's donation was 285,000 pesos and subtract it to the exemption, which is the 250,000 pesos. Equals the 35,000 pesos. And the 35,000 pesos multiplied by the 6% equals 2,100 donor tax to be paid. So where do we get the 6%? The 6% was the total net gifts of excess 250,000 pesos per year according to train law. So what if the donation is below 250,000 pesos? Then there's no donor tax to be paid. This is because of the 2,050 annual exemption granted per donor under the train law. I'm gonna give you another example. So Ella again donates 285,000 pesos but to the Perpetual Help Parish Church for construction. And here's our computation. There's no computation here because donation to the religious or charitable institution are exempted. So the donor tax is 0 and the church received the full amount, which is the 285,000 pesos. So if the church is BIR accredited as a non-stock, non-profit religious organization and the donation is used exclusively for religious purposes and no more than 30% of the donation is used for the administrative expenses, then they have the full exemption for the donor's tax. And here's our summary. So if you're donating to a relative, friend, or university project, then there's a tax. Then the reason is 6% of the excessive over 250,000 pesos. So if you're donating to religious or charitable institution, then there's no donor tax to be paid because it is exempted under the law. The government or accredited by the NGO, there's no donor tax to be paid. And because it is also exempted under the law. And here's our key takeaways for the donor tax. Donor tax is 6% of donation exceeding 250,000 per year. And you also need to file within 30 days using BIR Form 1800. And exception apply for gifts to government and accredited institution, but check the 30% admin expenses rule. And always keep proper documentation for BIR. That's all.